All right. I think we are back in business, and we had a little bit of a hiccup before, but we are going to send Will live right now. Boom, it worked.
Fantastic.
Good to see you here, Will. I'm sorry for the last hiccup, and for those who were watching, we had to restart the show. You know, glitches, software problems, COVID. Nothing makes sense these days.
Exactly. But we're here, so that's important. Good to see you, man.
Welcome to this edition of CorpDev.Ninja. It is September 4th, 2020. I have a very special guest here today, Will Chuchawat, from also live streaming in from Los Angeles. How are you, Will?
I'm doing great, man. I'm very excited to be talking to a ninja. I told my 5-year-old daughter that. She was like very interested about it. So,
well, you know, I'll have to show some of my moves at the end of the show and interview. So glad to be inspirational from that perspective. No, seriously, how have you been doing? Tell me about what you've been up to, and we'll get into the main part of the interview and all things M&A. But how are you doing in general? Where are you locked up? You're right down the block from me. So how have you been hanging?
Locked in LA since March 11th. I think the day that you shut down is gonna be one of those days that you remember forever, like your birthday is like, oh, remember back in 2020 when we locked down? Yeah, it was March 11th. It was a rainy Thursday, right? It's just one of those things that we'll remember forever. But it's actually been okay. Life for the Chuchawat household has been good. I've actually never had this much time to spend with my family, so trying to make lemonade out of lemons, right? Get to go spend time with the family, not be on the road, not on a plane. So
yeah, you're like you're an active guy. Generally, you're traveling all over. I mean, at least from what I know, continental U.S., but probably abroad as well, and working on a million deals. And it's probably this is the first time that many people. This is the least amount of traveling I've ever done in my life since I can even recall, even as a child.
Exactly. So it used to be a month every spring and fall in Asia, and then maybe a month in Europe, and up and down the coast a lot, right? And in the backseat of a lot of Ubers. And I've really sheltered in. I've not left LA. I've really rarely left the house. So taking it seriously, man.
Amazing. Well, good to hear that you're healthy and safe, and the family's doing well. So I'm going to give you a quick introduction so that folks know who exactly Mr. Will Chuchawat is. So Will Chuchawat is an M&A leader for Sheppard, Mullin, a global 100 law firm. He leads the practice, and also in venture capital as well. I've worked on some deals with you on the VC space, so both M&A and venture capital. He does M&A all day, every day. That's his slogan and tagline, and I think it's pretty witty, and I love it. Will has been consistently recognized as one of the best attorneys in the country. He is the co-founder of Vivotein, which fights climate change and food scarcity by solving food waste, and is also on the board of YPO Beverly Hills. Thanks for joining, Will.
Great to be here. Thanks for having me, man.
So why do you love M&A all day, every day? So we'll just talk about that piece, and not necessarily from a legal perspective, but you can. But like, why do you love doing it every day, all day?
It's the Super Bowl every day. That's probably why, Andreas. I mean, for most folks, most persons, whether you're private equity, VC, entrepreneur-led business, a public company, doing a deal is a transformative financial event, right? So it is their financial Super Bowl, oftentimes for their lifetime or for the lead year. And I get to be the one, the steward of that. And I get to be Tom Brady and Bill Belichick, and hopefully win those games for them. It's just at the highest levels. That's interesting.
Amazing. Yeah, you are. By the way, Will, you're breaking up a little bit, so I don't know if it's on my end or yours, but I think
Let me try to.
We got.
Try to up the. Any better.
In case you have another Wi-Fi access point to switch to, maybe.
I'm trying to increase the volume. No.
You are kind of scattered. I don't really see you very fluid right now.
Does this work any better?
No.
No. Why is not? Oh, bummer.
It's okay. Let's see. Let's just wait a second and see whether your connection improves.
Gotcha. Well, I hear perfectly. So
I'm sorry, Will, what was that?
I can hear you perfectly.
You can hear me perfectly? Okay, great. So I'm checking on LinkedIn Live, and you are frozen. Let's see here. Oh, it looks like Will might be switching to another Wi-Fi point. So let's hope that's the case. And he is able to join. In the meantime, I hope folks are enjoying their Friday. And I know I have a few things after this, but it's been a crazy long week. Let's see if Will is joining.
Can you see me though? Oh, I'm back.
Yes, perfect. I went into like an Anchorman monologue about random stuff
about the weather,
myself and folks entertained.
Exactly. Can you guys hear me? Okay.
Yeah, I can hear you perfectly now.
Oh, great. Yeah. Well, what I was saying about why I love M&A is because it's the Super Bowl every day, right? It's for most people, whether you're in private equity, a public company, or you own your own business, you're an entrepreneur, having an M&A, right, a merger and acquisition deal happen is the largest financial transaction of your life. It's a transformative financial transaction, and you get to be the Tom Brady and Bill Belichick of that, right? So it's chess at the highest levels.
I call it 4D chess. So so as you know, I'm also an M&A advisor from the business perspective. I couldn't agree with you more. It's one of the my most favorite projects and types of advisory work that I like to work with clients. It's a lot is at stake. It is massive transactions can really transform lives and companies, and quite frankly, you're like changing the lives of many people. So there's a sense of like pride and care. So I feel you on that. As legal counsel, how do you corp dev advise clients? What is your role in the process? Because I know Will as a lawyer, but I also know Will as he's not your typical lawyer. What's great about Will is he also provides a lot of business advisory as well. And so, how do you like to quarterback and lead your M&A teams and deals?
Sure, and that's the best way to think about it is that I want to. I think 95% of folks out there, lawyers out there, will probably just say, "Great, let me document whatever it is that's the deal." And I'm just a lot bossier than that and a lot pushier, and I want to be able to help you get to the best deal. So really, for me, it's you describe what point B, whatever that point B is, and we're at point A. I'll help you get to point B. Well, let's go figure out the best way to get there, versus just saying like, "Great, here are the terms and paper it up."
And how do you draw up? So when you're advising clients and saying, "Hey, this is the best structure," or "This is my," what do you draw on in order to advise clients? Because a lot of founders and CEOs of companies will, have a real kind of way of thinking about their business or a transaction, and sometimes it's really tough to steer a client in a different way than they may have previously thought, or they may have wild expectations around valuation, and you might need to bring them to earth a little bit. How do you kind of pair like all your experience in terms of guiding your clients around, this is the opportunity that I think is best for you, here's the valuation that I think is most appropriate for you? How do you have those conversations?
Sure, it's with data and it's with experience, right? So people generally, yes, everyone's business is special, everyone's baby is beautiful, right? And you want to make sure, you want to be able to say, and people oftentimes get a little bit anchored to whatever valuation they saw. If they saw some tech company worth something, they think I'm automatically worth 10x as well. Or if that person got $1 billion, well, I should also be a unicorn. But at the end of the day, right? I try to get people to think about, maybe you are an outlier, or maybe you're not. And if you're not, that's still okay. You still have a great business. And for me, it's also telling them, look, across hundreds of deals that I've done, this is what I see. right? And yes, there are outliers where you get them incredible valuations, and there are other ones that are still in the middle. What I tell people, Andreas, is the guy or the woman with $1 billion and the person with $100 million, they actually don't live that differently, right?
Yeah.
The difference between 100 and a billion is actually not that meaningful. The difference between 0 and 100 is a lot more meaningful.
That's right.
And so that actually gets people to realize that, I mean, getting to that number is great, but also what is your ultimate goal? If it's to provide for your family, provide for yourself, have a win, you don't need to necessarily win all that big.
That's right. And usually if you have $1 billion, at least half of that is in some sort of fund, various trusts, venture capital funds, hedge funds, and then the rest might be going back into starting a new business or owning multiple homes. I mean, at some point it's irrelevant. And it gets a little tricky depending on how many folks are on the cap table too. That's one thing that I've learned. I've had clients that wholly own their companies, and then I've worked with clients who have investors, so venture capitalists or angels, or a board that has different viewpoints around what they think ROI is, and depending on the series, like how recently their last funding was and expectations. In your experience, what are the nuances with working with companies that are kind of like founder owned versus where there are large cap tables with investors? What are the nuances around guiding both when it comes to M&A process, expectations, and valuations? Is there a difference?
There is a difference, because the folks on the cap table, we always have to go consider them, right? It's not just the one entrepreneur, and I've had plenty of businesses that have been basically family owned, right? Whether it's just because the entrepreneur and his family, or it's because there's VC backed and hundreds of folks on the cap table. Those are the types of situations where you have to say, are we going to be able to make everyone happy? Right. And what's sort of the best thing for everybody else there? When you deal with a single owner, effectively entrepreneur, it's a lot easier, right? It's just what's that person,
much easier.
Yeah. Versus the VC firm and the founder, and then all the other co-founders, and then the management team. Those are all different players that have a stake, right? And they all have a voice. And for example, if the founder has been diluted dramatically downward and isn't going to get quite the big payday, or the VC has their financial goals that aren't being met, or the management team says, hey, we're not getting as liquid as we wanted to, and we're the ones that drove all the value, we want more. You have to balance a lot of that. Right.
Totally understand that perspective, and have been there quite a few times myself in the thick of that process. What's the cleanest structure, M&A structure for companies to consider in today's market, and why? And there's different M&As depending on size, whether it's a kind of a smaller startup versus growth. But given the environment today that you're seeing, I mean, there's a whole thing around SPACs these days. What are you advising people? Or maybe a better question is, what are the various structures you like the most, and why?
Sure. Well, look, when it comes to an exit, right, people think about IPOs. They certainly think about simply selling. They think about dividend recaps. I typically think that if you can go ahead and sell directly, that's the easiest type of deal, right? You don't have to worry about lockups. You don't have to worry about the public equity markets.
That's right.
I mean, you look at what's happened.
Like sell to like a Vista Equity Partners or a Google, or
Exactly. And if they take you out 100%, then it's an easy day. You don't have to worry about it. Or if you end up selling to private equity and they make you roll over 20 to 40% of your business, and now you've gone from being an owner and the boss, and now you're working for private equity, much different feeling. Or if you're, even if you go public, right, you've never had that level of scrutiny before of being public, it's not always pleasant. Right. And being a public company CEO, it's not necessarily having job security. Right. You're being evaluated on a quarterly basis and subject to the direction of the board and their and whether they think you should stay or not.
Right. So interesting points. How do you feel about earnouts? Increasingly, depending on the company and depending on the type of transactions, I've seen earnouts like a necessary part of deals. In fact, a very significant part. of deals, and I have seen a variety of earnout kind of structures. I bet folks would want to learn a little bit more. How do you view earnouts in today's environment, and how relevant and prevalent are they?
Incredibly relevant, incredibly prevalent. I'll tell you now, you got to hit those earnouts. Well, you have to structure those earnouts such that they're actually achievable, right?
Achievable,
There's a lot of different ways that earnouts can get manipulated, including if it's based on EBITDA. We try to do it based on revenue because revenue is a little bit harder to move around. But you can think about it, right? If somebody said
cost accounting, you could, for EBITDA, you could basically do a lot of deferred revenue. You could inflate, you could front load cost. So top of revenue for earnouts is like your main piece of business wisdom when it comes to earnouts and M&A.
Exactly. We try to find the metric that is least manipulable, right? And we also try to make sure we put in guardrails to say, you can't push revenue to outside of the earnout period, right? Because if you said, hey, I could recognize this amount of revenue in the time period, but I could also just wait and take it 2 days later, then suddenly you don't hit your earnout, right? And I'll tell you, during COVID, I've had several companies that came back that had earnouts in 2019. Nobody predicted COVID, right? And so your earnout's zero. And so that's why I try to tell people.
Totally hosed.
Be happy with the money that you have up front, and the earnout is great if you get it, but you got to be happy with the money you have up front.
Great. I love that. I love your perspective there. I guess since we're talking all things M&A all day, every day, the biggest M&A deal right now that folks are, at least one of them, TikTok. What do you think about, and I'm just going to leave it high level. How do you feel about the TikTok deal? There's a lot of, private and public nuances to this deal. There's like geopolitics. I used to work at Microsoft at one time back in the day, and I love that they're getting involved. But it is a tricky one. And the CEO just stepped down, I think, after 3 months after.
It was a revolving door. You barely got you didn't get a seat.
Years at Disney. Warm. What's up?
You didn't even get a seat warm yet, Andreas.
Yeah. Well, how do you feel about, that's a really interesting case study. What's your thoughts on TikTok in terms of the outcome? Where do you think it's going to go?
Well, look, I think it's an incredibly, it's been a disruptive, amazing property, right? It's been a tremendous business. It's just blown up. Once you thought that the social media titans had all been set, suddenly came TikTok.
Me
right
too.
Out of nowhere.
I agree.
Yeah. And I actually love the fact that there are non-traditional players vying for TikTok, like Walmart. I mean, you sort of think, Walmart, what are they going to do with it? But that's interesting when you have companies that say, this is an amazing business that is being forced for sale, sort of a classic scenario where you can actually buy something that you might not otherwise be able to buy, and they're going whole hog into it. Right, and Oracle and whoever else is.
Oracle doesn't make sense. I from Walmart's perspective, I put like my strategy hat on. I'm like, okay, not a traditional buyer at all. But if it does become a major medium and social channel, like here to stay in long term and be a significant player compared to the other ones out there, obviously Facebook and Instagram. They're going to own all that margin for reaching out for like digital marketing for Walmart, for products, a great way to scale and compete against Amazon. Yeah. It's a totally not traditional, it's a non-traditional buyer, but I can at least see the synergies.
You can see it. Yep.
I can see it. I don't understand Oracle's play in this. Do you? It's not immediate to me. Unless it's completely unrelated diversification.
It could be, right? And look, I'm sure here's the other problem with being public. All those decisions you make will get second guessed by some law firm that will come sue, right? Somebody will be like, why did you guys go try to buy that thing? That made no sense for you, right? So we'll find out if they actually do win it, what everyone was thinking, because it'll be publicized.
That's right. And it's a complete saga that I love following. It's probably our areas of focus and practice that resonates with us more than others. So
you got Softbank throwing their hat in the ring right now. I mean,
so I didn't even know Softbank's throwing their hat in the ring for TikTok. I didn't realize that.
I think I read that in the journal this morning.
Probably. I've been working. I haven't had a moment to read so much today, so I probably missed that. Wow, interesting. I'll read about that after this interview. How is COVID affecting M&A?
There was a look from about mid-March until beginning of May. Everyone was staring into the abyss. It was nobody knew what was going on. Nobody knew if the world was ending, and M&A was at a ground to a halt. I mean, every deal was dead, dying, or on indefinite hold, abeyance,
on ice.
It's certainly come back with a vengeance, as if there was no such thing as COVID. And that's probably reflective of a lot of the public equity market behavior as well, is that people sort of say, okay, deals are going to get done, deals are going to continue to move.
Yeah.
And so it's on the healthy side. The healthy M&A is certainly going forward, and we're doing quite a lot of that. But there's also a lot of distressed M&A. So all the things from over-levered companies to companies that have been hit by, whether it's in hospitality, tourism, et cetera, that have been hit by COVID directly or indirectly, or the companies that service those companies, or just the retail, right? There's been a wave of retail bankruptcies, and I've been involved with a bunch of bidding on a lot of those assets. Like we can announce that we bought Pier 1 Imports, the furniture brand, and then Modell's, a large 155-ish chain of sporting goods companies.
Yeah, retail
recently.
Must be a feeding frenzy right now.
It is, and if you think about it, like I just know the numbers off the top of my head, but like Pier 1 in fiscal year 2019 had, I think, 1.6 billion in revenue, and because it's publicly announced, I mean the purchase price was around $31 million. You think about the price to sales on that is staggeringly low. I mean,
that's amazing. How long? So tell me about the pier. I mean, obviously I don't want you to talk about the intricacies and confidential stuff, but how long, at least from, for people who are founders and stewards of companies, how long does it take to get a deal from, start of conversation to close? So that recently, and I read about Pier 1 Imports acquisition. How many months does that take to get done?
Well, if you're on the buy side, it's a lot different. But on the buy side, typically from the time that you're getting your SIM, your confidential information memorandum, till the time that you actually close. Well, from the SIM time, you're negotiating an IOI and LOI, and then you're getting exclusivity for 30. And
for those who don't know, LOI is letter of intent or letter of interest. An indication of interest is IOI.
Exactly. And then, that might be a 2-month period for the IOI and LOI stage. And then you have another 30 to 120 days of exclusivity. So, I mean, it's a long process, even when you're buying. So people have to realize when companies are looking to buy a company, it's a long process for them that they put a lot of resources, a lot of dollars at. And on the sell side, you typically think about from the time you hire your investment banker until the time that you've sold, rule of thumb, about 6 months.
That's going to say six months. And oftentimes much longer than that. But I've not really seen deals done in less than 5, maybe. If hyper speed, both CEOs know each other, they've already shook hands. It's like a 4-month process, right? What are your parameters? I think 6 months is the sweet spot, but it certainly can extend much longer than that.
It absolutely can. I mean, you sort of the best laid plans, right? This is how you plan it out, but you get things that happen, whether it's your financials aren't quite in order, you don't have your house in order, you don't have COVID hits, whatever it is. There's lots of things that can happen that delay the process. And you also want to say, a lot of times, for example, if you run up against the summertime, you say, well, look, a lot of folks are not going to be as engaged during the summertime because there's vacations, et cetera. And you decide, okay, I'll wait a little bit. So timing always plays a role, right?
Exactly. And I always find for folks who want to get a deal done by the end of the year, this is based on my experience and probably, Will, probably yours as well. If you want to get a deal done by the end of the year, you need to start kind of before the summer. Because if a deal and things aren't penned, especially before Thanksgiving, they're not getting done. I rarely see deals that have, the term sheet and everything kind of ready to rock and roll. If it passes, if it rolls over early, mid-November, especially after Thanksgiving, it just gets punted into the next fiscal year.
Yeah, so we're coming up on the Tuesday after Labor Day is the historical kickoff to a lot of deal processes where you're going to see the markets flooded with a bunch of deals, and it's always that Tuesday after. So it's coming up, right? It's this upcoming Tuesday, and most of the bankers that I've talked to are definitely launching their processes. They've got some belief that the market's going to hold and that there's going to be interest out there. So we're gearing up for another very busy Q4.
Amazing. A couple more questions. We're at the tail end of our show. I want to get into, tell me about the company that you co-founded, Vivotein. Tell me about that. So which is amazing. You wear so many hats, Will, and you're also a startup co-founder. I love it.
So yeah, one thing you probably didn't expect me to say is I'm actually just a worm farmer. We basically.
You're a worm farmer. That's right.
Yeah. So Vivotein raises bugs. 1/3 of the food that we produce around the world ends up in trash before it hits our plate. And yet there's 1/3.
Oh wow.
And yet there is so much billions of folks out in the world with food security issues. They can't get enough food.
Right.
You think about all that food waste ends up in a dump site somewhere, a landfill. And of course, who wants a landfill in their backyard? So you're running out of space for landfills. But also, the food, when it decays, decays into methane gas. So methane gas is 84 times more potent than carbon dioxide. And so you've got
84 times more. Did you say?
84 times more potent than carbon dioxide.
Wow, to know that.
So it's a huge climate change issue. Yeah. And then on the other hand, food. We need more food produced to go feed people. And even though we live in LA and we get the luxury of eating plant-based proteins and all that great stuff, if you look over the past 15 years, the protein demand has outstripped the population growth tremendously. Right. And that's because emerging markets come online, whether it's China, India, Africa, South America. The richer you are, the more protein you want to eat. And that's oftentimes food, right? Like fish or chickens are the cheapest sources. Yeah. Well, in order to raise those things, you actually need to feed them protein. So a lot of it is fish meal. So they scrape the ocean, catch what they can, they grind it up, then they feed it to fish. So they catch fish to feed to us, and that's incredibly inefficient. What we do is we use the trash, so there's endless supply of trash, and then we raise worms with it. So these black soldier flies that eat the trash, and then we then use the insects to go feed chickens and fish, and that helps.
Is this all taking place in like a giant facility? Like, tell me where does this process take place? So you have a worm farm in a sense somewhere, right?
Exactly. It's closer than you would think. It's in Ontario, California. So we have the ability to go process 25 tons of trash a day. So think about that, 25 tons of trash a day.
I don't even know what that means. What is 25 tons of trash? Like,
it's a lot of trash. I mean, it's,
how many containers would that be?
It's like trucks and trucks of trash, man.
Wow.
And so you're saving that from going into a landfill, and what you're producing out as the output is worms that are basically dried and then fed for aquaculture and for chickens. Yeah. And you're also getting what's called frass, which is basically fertilizer. It's the bugs, casings, and excrement, but it's basically used for fertilizer. Yeah, incredibly clean process.
Sometimes tequila.
Exactly.
That's amazing. And how long have you been working on? I mean, how long? So I think the first time I met you, I don't know, that was several years ago. How long has this been in the process? And
about 2 years.
2 years. Got it. So a relatively new venture. And where do you go from here?
We scale, man. I mean, it's all about, look, every city has a trash problem. Every country has a trash problem. And the problem is only going to get worse. There's an unlimited supply of trash. The trash, by the way, they pay you to take, right? This is a business where the cost of goods are negative. And then the demand, right, in terms of for feed is unlimited. You can't run out of people that need feed.
That's a great climate change, social impact. You must be really pleased, and I'm proud of you, Will, for not only spending time making rich companies and rich people richer. That's what M&A. That's what I often say is part of my job. But It's great that you're putting all that brain power and effort and like all your deal making skills in something that is, you know, a global need, humanitarian, and an impact, social impact project. That's awesome. I love that. That's why you're one of my favorite lawyers, period, hands down, Will. We've got maybe one more minute. I don't want to let you leave yet unless you have to go to a call, but would just love to learn, what are you eating these days? Because I'm just such a foodie. I love to ask this people, and everyone has it. Like, some people have turned out to be like master chefs that I didn't know. Some folks I realized, like, I thought would be, they're like, oh, I hardly eat or make X, Y, you know, basic foods. I'm like, I always thought you'd be a great chef. So I don't know. How are you? Are you Postmating? Are you Uber eating? Are you cook? Are you slight? Like, what are you up to?
So I'm like you. I love going to restaurants. I love, you know, the fancy food type of meals, and there's none of that. And so I've actually not gone out to eat at all, and I don't Postmate. So we cook at home, my wife and I, and my wife's an amazing chef. So it's been great home cooked meals, and I couldn't be happier. It's like one of those things where Monday through Thursday I used to be out having dinner somewhere, and now it's like I get to make every meal at home and spend family suppers. That's really cool.
That's amazing. And two more quick questions. I also know that you're a wine connoisseur. Favorite kind of wine these days? What's your favorite COVID wine of choice?
COVID wine of choice is actually champagne, and the reason why it's pretty easy. Churchill said, I think, champagne is perfect because in victory I deserve it, and defeat I need it. And it's actually one of those champagne is actually goes well with most things. So not just the seafoods and everything else, but even like steaks and everything, things of that nature that are heavier, it's got the acidity and everything else that actually helps cleanse the palate.
Totally agree. I got to ask the question. Do you have a champagne saber?
I have certainly sabered champagne, but I do not do that on a regular basis. That seems scary.
I got an advertisement recently about a champagne saber that you can get at home, like a dedicated one. I'm like, this is some strange targeted marketing towards me. I was like, but that is interesting. I think I've only sabered a champagne bottle once. Awesome. And then anything interesting to watch, or have you basically, like everyone else, consumed everything there is on the streaming networks?
I actually don't watch anything. It's probably been about 6 years since I really watched anything on TV. It's, for me, I'm just happy that there's sports again. I watch a lot of highlights, and I'm glad that sports are happening.
Love it. Will, thank you so much for making the time. I really appreciate it. It's amazing to hear from you that your family and yourself are doing well, business as well. Tons of great insights from the M&A perspective, and love what you're working on as co-founder of your impact food consumable worm farm company. And after the show, we got to talk about that because I have some ideas for you. Thank you so much. Have a good Friday, and don't overwork, Will, because I know you tend to do it.
Take care, guys. Bye-bye.
Thank you, guys.